Hey, welcome to Just About Earth. This is a place where we let our curiosity wander, get comfortable, and really sink into an idea. And tonight, we're going to dive into a question that can lurk in the back of your mind for years, just sitting there quietly, before it suddenly steps out and demands your attention. It's not one of those questions with a neat and tidy answer. Honestly, it's not even a question most people want to think about for too long. But if you let it, it can make you tilt your head and see your entire life from a completely different angle. The question itself is simple to say, but it's so complex that it can change the way you feel about, well, almost everything. What if Earth was a test? I don't mean that as a metaphor or some clever figure of speech. I mean, what if it's a real test? The kind that's set up on purpose. The kind that has an observer. The kind where all your choices, your struggles, and the way you live your life are being recorded, reviewed, and maybe even graded. Perhaps it was designed by some higher intelligence. Maybe it's an ancient power that people used to call gods. It could be an alien civilization from a galaxy so distant we'd never even know they were there. Or, and this is where it gets really weird, maybe it's us. Future humans reaching back through time or technology, setting the stage for their own ancestors just to see how the story plays out. You've probably had little flashes of this idea before, even if you didn't put a name to it. Those moments when life feels a little too scripted, when things line up almost too perfectly, when someone walks into your life at the exact moment you needed them, or an event happens that feels like it was engineered to make you question everything. But before we get lost in all those possibilities, let me ask you something a bit smaller. Where are you listening from right now? Are you in a familiar place? Or are you traveling somewhere new? Is it daytime for you? Or is the world outside your window dark? We're all scattered across so many different time zones, yet somehow we've all arrived in this moment together. Your now might be filled with bright morning light, while someone else's is wrapped in quiet shadows. If you're listening to this to wind down, I hope it can be a calm companion for the end of your day. If you're just getting started, maybe this can be a steady hum in the background as you step into whatever's next. If you enjoy this kind of slow, thoughtful exploration, if this is the kind of conversation you like to just drift into, it would mean a lot if you'd give this video a like, and maybe subscribe to the channel. It really helps this little space find other people who might be looking for something like this to start or end their day. Okay, now that we've set the pace, we can walk through this idea together. There's no rush. Because thinking about Earth as a test isn't about finding an answer as fast as possible. It's about noticing what changes inside you when you just hold that question in the back of your mind. The first thing you realize is that the word test means different things to different people. Back in school, a test probably meant sitting at a desk, staring at a piece of paper, with a clock on the wall making every second feel heavy. But in life, a test is so much more than that. It can be a measure of what you've learned without even realizing you were in a lesson. It's a way to see how you react under pressure, or maybe more importantly, how you act when nobody is telling you what to do. In this thought experiment, Earth as a test doesn't mean we're all sitting for the same exam. It could mean every single person is facing their own unique version of it, tailored in ways we can't even see. You might already be thinking about just how specific the conditions for life are here. The almost unbelievable balance of factors that allow us to exist at all. Earth isn't too close to the sun, and it isn't too far. It has the right chemical cocktail, the right kind of atmosphere, and just the right amount of protection from cosmic radiation. Its magnetic field acts like an invisible shield, protecting us from solar winds that would otherwise strip our planet bare. Its orbit is stable. Its seasons are predictable enough for life to make plans. When scientists talk about the Goldilocks zone, they're describing this just right setup. But if Earth is a test, then maybe these conditions aren't just a series of happy accidents. Maybe they're the carefully chosen settings for an exam, designed to see what life would do if it was given the perfect place to start. That brings up another thought. If this is a test, what are the questions? Is it about survival? Can we adapt to a changing climate, natural disasters, and the endless list of diseases that seem determined to take us down? Or is it a test of morality? How do we treat each other when resources are limited, or when we have more than enough? Is it about cooperation? Can we work together despite our differences in language, culture, and belief? Or maybe the real questions are about something we haven't even thought of yet, some hidden variable. That's the entire point of all this. You might be wondering if there are any signs we're being observed. And if there are, would we even recognize them? If a higher intelligence wanted to see how we behave naturally, they wouldn't just show up and announce themselves. They'd stay hidden, letting events play out without interference. Or maybe their interference would be so subtle that we'd just call it luck or coincidence. A sudden downpour that forces two strangers under the same awning. A tiny sequence of events that prevents you from taking your usual route to work one day. It's easy to dismiss these things, but if Earth were a test, those moments could be the controlled variables in a massive experiment. Of course, this idea isn't brand new. Many ancient cultures and religions have framed life as a kind of trial. In some belief systems, the purpose is to see if you live by a certain moral code, with the outcome deciding your fate in the afterlife. In others, life is a journey meant to teach the soul lessons it couldn't learn anywhere else. The details are all different, but the core idea that we are here for a reason that goes beyond just existing shows up again and again. In that sense, thinking about Earth as a test isn't really inventing something new. It's looking at a very old idea with fresh eyes. Some people find this thought incredibly comforting. If life is a test, then suffering isn't meaningless. Our struggles have a purpose, even if we can't see what it is. Others find it deeply unsettling. It suggests we're constantly being judged, and that there could be consequences we can't even imagine. Either way, it changes how you look at your daily life. The small moment of kindness you show to a stranger for no reason. The decision you make when you think nobody's watching. The way you respond when everything goes wrong. If these are all part of an assessment, you start to notice them in a different way. There's also the chance that the test isn't about individuals at all, but about humanity as a whole. Maybe it's less about whether you or I pass, and more about whether our entire species can hit certain milestones. Can we develop sustainable ways to live? Can we avoid wiping ourselves out with our own technology? Can we learn to communicate without turning every disagreement into a war? If that's the case, then every generation is just another round of data collection, another group of participants in a study that's been running for a very, very long time. It's hard not to think about the big moments in history this way. The sudden rise and fall of civilizations, the repeating cycles of conflict and peace, the breakthroughs in science and the setbacks that follow. From a certain angle, it all looks like a progress report from a long-term experiment, one that's been running for thousands, maybe millions of years. If you've ever heard the phrase trial by fire, you know that humans already test themselves this way. We create challenges to push past our comfort zone. We invent games and competitions just to see who can overcome obstacles. If we do this to ourselves for growth or even just for entertainment, it's not a huge leap to imagine that someone or something might be doing it to us on a planetary scale. And this is where it gets really interesting. If this is a test, we might not be graded on the final answer alone. We might be graded on the process on how we handle the test itself. Do we panic? Do we cheat? Do we give up? Or do we keep going even when the questions are harder than anything we prepared for? The way we approach the unknown could be the real measure of who we are, which means that even asking the question, what if Earth is a test, might be part of the test itself. And as we settle into this idea, we're going to keep walking forward together. We'll look at how this planet seems perfectly built for life, how the challenges we face might be more than just random chance, and how stories from our ancient past all the way to the present might be pointing to the same strange, incredible possibility. If you really sit with the idea that Earth might be a test, the first thing that happens is the world around you starts to look a little different. The chair you're sitting in, the walls of the room, the faint sounds in the background, even the way the air feels on your skin, they all take on a strange quality, as if they're part of a set that was deliberately arranged, not just things that happen to be there. It's like walking into a room you've been in 100 times, but suddenly noticing a detail you've never seen before. The room hasn't changed. You have. That's what makes this thought so sticky. It's not something you can prove or disprove, but once you've considered it, you start running everyday life through a new filter. That long commute you've always hated? Is it just an inconvenience, or is it a lesson in patience? That sudden, unexpected challenge. Is it just bad luck, or is it part of an intentional obstacle course? Even the people you meet, the ones who show up at exactly the right or wrong moment, start to look less like random encounters and more like pieces being moved on a board by an unseen player. It's interesting how often we naturally fall into this way of thinking. We say things like, everything happens for a reason when events line up in a way that feels too meaningful to be random. We tell stories about fate, destiny, and being meant to cross paths with certain people. Whether you believe those ideas literally or not, they show how comfortable we are with the notion that there might be a structure to life beyond pure chance. If Earth is a test, then those moments of perfect alignment could be the hints, the subtle nudges letting us know there's a design under the surface. But the real weight of this question isn't just about the possibility of being tested, it's about what that would imply. If this is a test, then there's a purpose behind its design. That means the conditions of our world, the good, the bad, the things that make no sense, and the things that feel perfectly balanced aren't just accidents, they're chosen. Every storm, every illness, every scientific breakthrough, every period of peace, every war, they could all be part of the exam. And that's where the thought stops being a light curiosity and starts feeling a lot heavier. This isn't about paranoia. It's not about imagining a shadowy figure watching you through hidden cameras. It's about zooming out in your mind so far that you can see the entire planet and everything on it as one connected system. Picture Earth from space. Not just the continents and oceans, but the constant swirl of clouds, the pulsing lights of cities at night, the shifting patterns of weather, the migrations of animals, the movements of people. It's a living, breathing sphere where billions of individual lives are playing out all at once, each person thinking they're just living their own story. If there's a designer, they're watching all of it unfold together, the same way you might look at the screen of a strategy game and see every unit moving in real time. When you see it like that, the next question comes crashing in. What would the goal of the test be? If you were the one running this massive experiment, what would you want to find out? Would you be looking for the most adaptable individuals, the kindest, the most intelligent? Or would you be watching for the group as a whole to reach a certain milestone before you decide they've passed? You could dream up hundreds of possible objectives, from moral development to technological achievement, or even some unknown quality that we don't even have a word for yet. Ancient traditions leaned heavily toward morality. In many old belief systems, the test of life was about how you treated others, whether you followed a set of divine rules, and whether you acted with compassion and integrity, especially when it was hard. The reward for passing might be a ticket to paradise, a move to a higher plane of existence, or simply the avoidance of punishment. But in more modern scientific speculation, the scope is much broader. If the observer is an advanced alien civilization, or our own descendants, their interest might not be in our individual morality at all. They could be measuring our survival instincts, our problem-solving skills, our creativity, or our ability to cooperate on a global scale. What makes this line of thought even more compelling is that tests often hide their true purpose until they're over. Sometimes you're told you're being measured on one thing, when in reality the examiners are watching something else entirely. In psychological experiments, and even in some job training programs, the stated goal is often a distraction. The real data comes from how you react when you think you're being tested for something different. If Earth is like that, then the things we think matter most, our careers, our wealth, our social status, might be the wrong metrics entirely. Then there's the question of whether we, the participants, are meant to know it's a test. In most situations, awareness changes behavior. If you know you're being graded, you might try harder. You might also try to cheat the system. That could be why, if there is an observer, they've chosen to stay hidden. Or maybe our awareness is one of the questions on the test. What do people do when they start to suspect there's more going on than what they can see? Do they search for answers? Do they try to communicate with whoever's in charge? Or do they just ignore it and get on with their lives? It's also possible that the test is layered. At the smallest scale, each of us could be evaluated individually, how we handle our personal struggles, how we treat others, whether we keep going when things get tough. But at a larger scale, our species could be evaluated collectively. Do we destroy ourselves? Do we find a way to live sustainably? Do we ever learn to spread beyond our home planet? If both levels are in play, then the experiment is far more complex, with every individual choice rippling out and affecting the larger group's outcome. History is a goldmine for this kind of analysis. Civilizations rise, innovate, and then collapse. New ones grow in their place, often making the same mistakes, sometimes learning from the past, sometimes forgetting it completely. Technology transforms how we live, opening up possibilities our ancestors couldn't have dreamed of, while also creating dangers they never had to face. We cooperate when it's convenient and compete when it's not, and in the process, we shape the future for everyone. It's messy, unpredictable, and full of contradictions, which makes it the perfect environment to generate interesting data if someone is observing. And that brings us to the unsettling part. If it is a test, it's not necessarily a safe one. Tests can be designed to push you to your absolute limits. They can be timed, with an endpoint you don't know is coming. They can be structured so that only some will pass. They can include trick questions, distractions, and moments where one wrong move costs you everything. None of that would feel fair if you didn't know you were in a test. But fairness might not be the point. The point could be to see what you do under exactly those conditions. But it's not all grim. If the test is designed to measure growth, creativity, or problem solving, then every challenge is also an opportunity. Every unexpected turn is a chance to prove how adaptable you are. The moments that feel like the biggest setbacks could be the ones that count the most. The problem is, without knowing the scoring system, we can't be sure. And that's part of what makes this question so powerful. It forces you to think about what's worth doing, even when you have no idea how you're being evaluated. And so, the question keeps lingering, changing the way you see everything. You can't help but look at the structure of the world, the perfect balance between order and chaos, the way life clings to every corner of this planet, the way humanity keeps pushing forward despite every single obstacle, and wonder if that balance is the key. Are we meant to live with it, to change it, or to learn from it? You start to notice that even your smallest choices might matter more than they seem. That a moment of kindness to a stranger, a bit of persistence in the face of boredom, or a spark of curiosity about the unknown, all of them might be quiet answers on a much, much bigger test. If you're going to imagine Earth as a testing ground, the first thing you'd want to do is take a good look at the setup, the environment, the stage itself. And when you start doing that, the planet begins to look suspiciously well prepared for the part. It's as if someone went down a checklist, making sure all the conditions were balanced just enough to make life possible, but not so easy that it would be boring. The more you look at the details, the more they start to feel less like a series of cosmic accidents and more like part of a deliberate design. The most obvious place to start is our distance from the sun. A little too close, and the intense heat would boil away our oceans and bake the surface. A little too far, and we'd be a frozen ball of ice, locked in a permanent winter. But here we are, orbiting in this narrow band that scientists call the Goldilocks zone. It's not too hot, not too cold, but just right. We get all the warmth and energy we need without being fried. That's setting number one. Then there's the tilt of our planet's axis. At about 23.5 degrees, it gives us seasons. For most of us, they're not too extreme, but they're not absent either. Those seasons are the rhythm of our world. They shape farming, animal behavior, and the entire cycle of human life. If the tilt were much greater, our weather would be violent and chaotic, with brutal summers and frigid winters that would make civilization almost impossible. If there was no tilt at all, the climate would be static and unchanging, which would reduce the pressure on life to adapt. From a testing perspective, seasons are a brilliant feature. They force life to be flexible, to plan ahead, to change. They introduce a predictable, but still challenging pattern to our existence. And then there's the moon. Our moon is unusually large compared to the size of our planet, and it sits at the perfect distance to create the tides. Those tides stir the oceans, mixing nutrients and creating the dynamic coastal zones where many scientists believe life first got its start. But the moon also acts as a stabilizer. It keeps Earth from wobbling on its axis, which prevents our climate from swinging into unpredictable extremes. In a test, you'd want long-term stability combined with manageable short-term challenges. The moon provides both. It's like a critical piece of equipment keeping the entire experiment running smoothly. Our atmosphere is another one of these strangely precise features. It's thick enough to act as a shield, burning up most meteors and blocking harmful radiation from space. But it's thin enough to let the sunlight we need get through. It holds the perfect mix of gases, mostly nitrogen and oxygen, with just enough carbon dioxide to regulate temperature through the greenhouse effect. At least until we started messing with that balance. If the air was much different, we simply wouldn't be here. If there was too much oxygen, fires would burn uncontrollably. It's also finely tuned that it feels less like a random outcome and more like a careful calibration. Even the things we can't see seem to fit the pattern. Take Earth's magnetic field. It's generated by the molten core of our planet, and it creates an invisible shield that deflects the solar wind and cosmic rays that would otherwise strip away our atmosphere over time. Mars, for example, lost its strong magnetic field, and its atmosphere is now incredibly thin. Without our shield, Earth would be a much more dangerous place. vulnerable to bursts of energy from the sun that could devastate ecosystems and disrupt any civilization trying to get started. If you were designing a long-term experiment, you'd want to protect your subjects from catastrophic interruptions. Not complete safety, but just enough to let the test run for billions of years. Water, too, exists in a perfect sweet spot here. We have a global system where it's constantly moving between all three states: solid ice, liquid water, and gas vapor. This water cycle regulates the climate, supports a huge variety of ecosystems, and provides the range of environments needed for different forms of life to evolve. A test with no variety would produce very narrow results. But Earth's incredible range of environments, deserts, rainforests, oceans, mountains, pushes life to adapt in countless different ways. The result is a biosphere so diverse that no single catastrophe can wipe everything out. That kind of resilience might be exactly what an observer would want to measure. The planet's geology plays a part too. Plate tectonics don't just move continents and build mountains. They also recycle key elements like carbon, which helps regulate the temperature over millions of years. Volcanic activity brings fresh minerals to the surface, creating fertile soil. Without this constant geological activity, Earth might have become a stagnant, dead world. With it, the planet is in a constant state of renewal, always creating new opportunities and new challenges for life. From a test designer's perspective, it's like being able to hit a reset button on certain areas without having to shut down the whole system. Even the most dangerous parts of our world start to look different through this lens. Hurricanes, earthquakes, droughts, volcanoes, they all cause immense suffering and destruction. But they also force us to adapt. They push societies to develop new technology, to learn how to cooperate, and to make long-term plans. They test our resilience on both an individual and a collective level. A perfectly safe, unchanging world might be comfortable, but it wouldn't reveal much about how life responds to pressure. When scientists talk about how improbable life is, they're talking about the sheer number of things that had to go right. It's not just one or two lucky breaks, it's dozens of them. Our sun is unusually stable. Our solar system has giant planets like Jupiter that act as cosmic bodyguards, deflecting asteroids that would otherwise hit Earth. The chemical makeup of our planet is perfectly suited for biology. Some people call this evidence of fine-tuning. Others explain it away with the anthropic principle, the idea that of course the universe looks perfect for us. Because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be here to observe it. But if you lean into the test scenario, that fine-tuning is simply the setup. The experiment starts with an environment where success is possible, but never guaranteed. When you look at it this way, every part of the natural world, from the predictable orbit of the moon to the deep ocean currents, starts to feel like an intentional variable in a massive, ongoing trial. The question then changes from, isn't it lucky that Earth is so perfect for life, to, why was it made just perfect enough for life to thrive, but just imperfect enough for life to be constantly challenged? A perfect paradise wouldn't force any growth. A hostile wasteland wouldn't allow any. This in-between state, balanced right on the edge of stability and chaos, is exactly where the most interesting results would come from. Next time you step outside, look around with this in mind. The way trees pull carbon dioxide from the air and give us oxygen back. The way pollinators keep entire ecosystems going. The way the weather shifts just enough to keep you on your toes. All of it starts to feel less like the background noise of life, and more like a carefully constructed environment, tuned to see what you'll do with it. And if the stage is built with this much care, the next logical question is about the script. Are the events that take place here just as deliberate as the conditions themselves? If the planet itself feels like a perfectly set stage, the next thing you notice is that life here seems to follow a specific set of rules. We don't remember agreeing to them, and we don't fully understand them, but they're always there, shaping everything we do from the moment we arrive to the moment we leave. Some of these rules are obvious, written right into the laws of physics and biology. Others are more subtle, like invisible walls we only find when we walk right into them. And if Earth really is a test, these rules could be the hidden instructions, the fine print on the exam that you don't get to read until it's already started. The most basic, unavoidable rule is simple. Time only moves in one direction. No matter what you do, you can't pause it, you can't rewind it, and you can't skip ahead to see how things turn out. Every choice you make locks in the path behind you and reshapes the one in front of you. As a rule in a test, this is incredibly effective. Because you can't see the outcome in advance, You have to make decisions based on what you know right now, and then you have to live with the consequences. That one rule alone reveals a ton about a person's character, judgment, and ability to adapt. Then there's the rule of physical vulnerability. Our bodies need food, water, and rest. They get sick and injured. They wear out over time. Nobody gets to opt out of this. In a way, it's a great equalizer. No matter how much power or wealth you have, you're still bound by the same basic needs as everyone else. In a test scenario, this ensures that survival is never automatic. It has to be earned, day after day, by meeting those needs no matter what else is going on in your life. Pain, both physical and emotional, is another one of these built-in rules. We think of it as something to avoid, but it's also a teacher. Pain is a signal that something is wrong, and it forces you to change your behavior. It pushes you to avoid certain things and to find solutions to problems. It can also build empathy when you see someone else going through a pain you understand. If this were a designed environment, pain would be an essential tool. Without it, there's no immediate feedback for bad choices or dangerous situations. With it, the observers get constant data on how we respond to difficulty. Do we avoid it, face it, or use it as a reason to help others? Loss is another rule that's woven into the fabric of this place. Nothing and no one is permanent. People, possessions, and opportunities can all disappear, sometimes without any warning. In a test, this could be an intentional feature, a way to see how participants handle a change they can't control. Do they cling to what's gone, or do they adapt and build something new from what's left? In our daily lives, loss feels deeply personal, but in the larger picture of a test, it could be one of the most revealing measures of resilience. On top of these universal rules, we also live by the ones our societies create. These aren't fixed by nature, they're made by people, but their effects are just as real. Laws, customs, and unwritten social expectations shape what's considered acceptable, what gets rewarded, and what gets punished. And what's fascinating from a testing perspective is that these rules are different all over the world. An action that's praised in one culture might be condemned in another. This variation could be part of the design, a way to see how people navigate conflicting systems, or whether they ever stop to question the rules they were born into. And then there are the rules that seem almost engineered to create tension. Resources are limited. There isn't enough of everything for everyone to have as much as they want. This scarcity forces us to make decisions. Do you share what you have? Or do you take more for yourself? Do you compete? Or do you cooperate? Do you hoard things out of fear? Or do you trust that there will be enough to go around? In a cooperative game, scarcity is a test of teamwork. In a competitive one, it's a test of strategy. Here, on Earth, it's a test of both, because we live in a constant mix of cooperation and competition. Not all the rules are about limits. Some are about opportunity. You have the freedom to learn new skills, build relationships, and create things that have never existed before. You can move to new places, change your career, and even start your life over if you're willing to take the risk. But every opportunity comes with a cost in time, energy, or resources. And that fundamental rule about time always moving forward means you can't seize every opportunity that comes your way. You have to choose. And in the act of choosing, you are being tested. What makes all these rules so tricky is that they don't always reveal themselves right away. Some you only learn through painful experience. Others you might never fully figure out. Sometimes you think you've found a loophole, only to discover later that the loophole was just another part of the test, a scenario designed to see how you'd act when given what looks like an easy win, but which comes with hidden consequences. Even the things we call luck, both good and bad, could be part of this structure. Randomness is a powerful testing tool because it prevents anyone from getting too comfortable. If you knew exactly when and how every challenge would appear, you could prepare for all of them. But when chance plays a role, you have to adapt on the spot. It's in those moments when the plan falls apart, when the unexpected happens, that you get the clearest picture of how someone really thinks and acts. It's also crucial to notice that the rules aren't the same for everyone. We don't all start at the same place. Some people are born into wealth, health, and safety. Others start with poverty, illness, and danger. From one point of view, that seems deeply unfair. But from a testing point of view, it's a way to measure different variables. How do people behave when they start with an advantage? How do they behave when they start with a disadvantage? Does your starting position determine your outcome, Or can things like determination, intelligence, and kindness change the result? If you think about it like that, the incredible diversity of human experience isn't a flaw in the system. It's the whole point. And yet, after all that, we're never given a rule book. There's no official guide telling you which actions lead to a better score. We have to guess, experiment, and learn as we go. That uncertainty can be frustrating. But it's also what makes the whole process so revealing. If you knew exactly what was being measured, you could just tailor your behavior to fit the test. Without that knowledge, your actions are more likely to show your real priorities, not just the ones that would earn you points. When you look at it this way, these rules we never agreed to are less like a strict set of laws and more like the physics of the game we're in. They set the boundaries of what's possible and the conditions we have to operate under. You can't change them, but you can learn how to work within them. And maybe the very act of trying to learn the rules is part of the test itself. When you think about it, these invisible agreements are everywhere in the way societies form, in the way nature cycles through growth and decay, in the way every living thing has to fight for its place. They're woven so deeply into the world that we rarely even notice them. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the test isn't about following the rules perfectly, but about what you do once you begin to understand them. That's where the real decisions are made. Which means the next place to look for clues isn't just in the planet's design or its hidden rules, but in the stories we've been telling ourselves for thousands of years about why we're here. If you go searching for the earliest human ideas about why we're here, you don't find scientific formulas or lab reports. You find stories. Stories passed down around fires, whispered in temples, carved into stone, and painted on cave walls long before anyone had the tools to measure the distance to the sun or map the ocean floor. People were trying to explain life in a way that made sense to them. And again, in different corners of the world and across different centuries, you find the exact same thread. The idea that life is a kind of trial. Take ancient Egypt, for example. One of the most powerful images from their mythology is the weighing of the heart. The belief was that after you died, your heart would be placed on a scale opposite a single, perfect feather, the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and order. If your heart was heavy with bad deeds, it would tip the scales, and your existence would be over. But if it was light and pure, you were granted entry into the afterlife. It's a stunning image, and it sends a crystal clear message. What you did in your life was being measured, and the results would determine your fate. That's not just a story. It's a belief in a system that evaluates every single individual. In ancient Greece, philosophers like Plato often talked about life as a proving ground for the soul. They believed the soul was immortal, and that its time on earth was a series of experiences designed to test and refine it. In their view, the physical world was an imperfect place, intentionally filled with challenges to push the mind and spirit, preparing them for something greater. Even the Greek concept of virtue qualities like courage, justice, and self-control was seen as something you had to actively develop through effort, not something you were just born with. Halfway across the world, in ancient China, philosophies like Confucianism taught that life was a continuous exercise in self-improvement, an ongoing assessment of your moral character. Your behavior within your family, your community, and your government wasn't just about keeping things orderly. It was a direct measure of who you were. The test here wasn't necessarily about an afterlife, but about proving your worth in the here and now by fulfilling your duties and maintaining balance in society. This same idea echoes in indigenous traditions all over the globe. In many Native American stories, life is seen as a path filled with obstacles meant to teach wisdom. In many African spiritual traditions, hardships are understood as essential lessons that prepare a person's spirit for their place among the ancestors. In Polynesian cultures, the immense challenges of navigating the sea and surviving on isolated islands were deeply tied to spiritual growth. Endurance, skill, and respect for the natural world were all seen as measures of a person's character. The major world religions that followed are even more direct about life being a test. In Islam, the Quran repeatedly describes this life as a trial from God, with rewards in paradise or consequences in hell based on one's faith and actions. In Christianity, the concept of a final judgment looms large, with salvation or damnation hanging on a person's deeds and beliefs. In Hinduism, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, known as samsara, is driven by karma, which acts as both the record of your actions and the mechanism of the test. determining the circumstances of your next life. What's so fascinating is how this one idea shows up in so many different cultures that had no contact with each other. The details change: who is giving the test, what's being measured, what the rewards and punishments are, but the core idea is always the same. Life isn't random. It's a process with stakes. Your actions matter, and someone or something is keeping track. You could explain this incredible similarity in a few ways. Maybe it's evidence that all of these different civilizations were sensing the same underlying truth about reality, each just describing it in their own language. Or maybe it's just a reflection of the human mind. We crave meaning, and a test is a simple and powerful structure for making sense of a chaotic world. But there's a third, more strategic possibility. If you were designing an environment like this, and you wanted to guide behavior without showing your hand, embedding the idea of a trial into the culture itself would be a brilliant move. The belief that your actions are being watched and judged, even if you can't see the observer, is a powerful motivator. You can see it in how these ancient systems so often balance hope and fear. Paradise, enlightenment, becoming one with the divine, those are the rewards. Eternal punishment, exile, being reborn into a worse life, those are the consequences. In a world without modern law enforcement, these beliefs worked as an invisible framework for keeping societies in order. If Earth is a test, then these belief systems might not have been just spontaneous human creations. They could have been tools serving the larger structure. It's also interesting that so many of these ancient tests weren't just about what you did alone. They were about how you functioned as part of a group. In many traditions, selfishness or harming your community was one of the fastest ways to fail. Generosity, cooperation, and fulfilling your role were often the keys to success. If you were trying to find out if a species could achieve large-scale cooperation, these are exactly the values you'd want to encourage. When you start thinking about how deeply these old beliefs have shaped us, you realize they've influenced everything: our laws, our art, our governments, our wars. If they are part of a larger test, they're not just symbolic stories. They're a central mechanism for steering the entire human experiment. And even today, long after many of these ancient cultures have faded, their core ideas are still with us. The belief that life has a purpose beyond just survival shows up in modern philosophy, in self-help movements, and in the way we talk about personal growth. We might not call it a trial anymore, but the idea that we are here to learn something, to improve ourselves, or to prove we're capable of more is incredibly hard to shake. And maybe that persistence is the most telling sign of all. Across thousands of years, countless languages, and every type of society imaginable, we keep coming back to the same question: what is this for? The answers we've come up with have been wrapped in myth, ritual, and faith. But the question itself has never gone away. That could mean it's just a fundamental part of being human, or it could mean it's a question we are meant to keep asking, one of the test's central prompts, still waiting for us to figure out. Which naturally leads to the next thought. If there is someone or something watching, what does their perspective look like? How would they see us not as we see ourselves, but as a species moving through this long, unpredictable, and cosmic trial? If the idea of a test has been with us since we first started telling stories, then the next step is to wonder who or what might be running it. And this is where the thought shifts from something symbolic to something chillingly literal. Ancient traditions gave names and faces to the ones they believed were watching. Gods, spirits, ancestors. But if you strip away those specific images, you're left with a simple, unsettling question. Is someone really out there, observing everything we do? If they are, they've been incredibly careful. They haven't landed a ship on the White House lawn or appeared in the middle of a stadium to make their presence obvious. They haven't broadcast a clear message in every language explaining the rules and the goals. If they're watching, they're doing it in a way that leaves us guessing. And maybe that's the whole point. In any experiment, if the subjects know exactly what's being studied, their behavior changes. It's called the observer effect. If Earth is a test, then keeping the observers hidden might be the only way to get real, unfiltered results. So, who could these watchers be? The oldest and most familiar idea is the divine, a creator, or a group of creators, whose power is far beyond our understanding. In that version, everything we see is their design, and every moment of our lives is known to them. For those who believe this, the idea of being observed isn't scary, it's reassuring. It means there's a purpose, even if we don't fully understand it, and that no act, good or bad, goes unnoticed. Then there's the extraterrestrial possibility. Somewhere out in the vastness of the galaxy, there could be a civilization so advanced that our entire planet is just one of many projects they monitor. To them, Earth might be a controlled environment, like a cosmic nature reserve or a long-running field study. From their perspective, we might not be much different than wildlife researchers tagging animals to track their migration patterns. The only difference is that our tags might be invisible, woven into the very fabric of reality itself. It's also possible that the watchers are future humans. If our descendants ever master time travel or develop unbelievably powerful simulation technology, they could look back on our era and decide to recreate it, not for fun, but as a study. In that scenario, we might be living inside a perfect reconstruction of the past. Every detail recreated from historical data, every person simulated with enough complexity to believe they are real. The observers could be stepping in and out of our reality whenever they wanted, tweaking variables and watching how we respond. That idea leads directly to what's known as the simulation hypothesis. The notion that our entire world could be a highly detailed, computer-generated environment. If that's true, then the observers aren't just watching from a distance. They're in complete control of the system's rules, from the laws of physics that govern atoms to the grand sweep of history. But whoever they are, they've had to decide how much to reveal, and this is where things get complicated. Throughout history, you find these moments where people claim to have seen or experienced something that just doesn't fit strange lights in the sky. Visions of otherworldly beings, sudden flashes of insight that seem to come from nowhere. For many, these are just coincidences, illusions or misinterpretations. But for others, they're hints that the watchers aren't entirely absent, just extremely cautious. The problem with hints is that they're always open to interpretation. One person's miracle is another person's optical illusion. If the watchers are real and they want to maintain ambiguity, this is the perfect strategy. They make appearances just rare and strange enough to spark curiosity, but not so clear that they eliminate all doubt. That way, those who are inclined to believe will find their evidence, and those who are inclined to be skeptical will find their explanations. Both groups continue to behave according to their own nature, which gives the observers a much more complete picture. It's worth asking what they'd even be looking for. If they're divine, maybe they're focused on our moral and spiritual growth. If they're extraterrestrials, their goals might be purely scientific, studying how an intelligent species develops technology and social structures on an isolated world. And if they're future humans, they might be trying to understand the crucial turning points in history, the choices that led to their survival or our disaster. The scale of their observation could also vary. Maybe every single action and thought is being recorded, as if each of our lives is a complete file in a massive cosmic archive. Or maybe their focus is on the big picture, watching how societies form and collapse, how cultures evolve, how technology changes the balance between cooperation and conflict. In that sense, the observers might be less like exam proctors and more like ecologists watching a forest, noting the slow, subtle changes over vast stretches of time. If they are there, their methods could be beyond anything we can currently imagine. They might be able to nudge events on a global scale without leaving a trace. Or they could intervene in the smallest possible ways, like placing a single stone in a river just to see how the current shifts over the next 1,000 years. To us, both kinds of actions would be completely invisible, lost in the noise of history. There's also the unsettling thought that we've mistaken their silence for absence. Just because we haven't detected them doesn't mean they're not there. We already live in a world filled with signals and forces we can't perceive without the right instruments. Radiation, magnetic fields, radio waves passing through us every second. An observer with technology beyond our comprehension could be right here, right now, without us having the slightest clue. What makes this thought so powerful isn't just that someone might be watching, it's that we don't know their intentions. Are they rooting for us to succeed? Are they indifferent, just gathering data? Or are they testing us for reasons we could never possibly understand? Without knowing, we're left to speculate. And that speculation can make you see patterns everywhere you look, not just in ancient myths, but in the way history unfolds. The way certain events seem to echo each other, the way some moments feel like they were perfectly set up just to see how we would react. If you start to imagine those moments as the points where the watchers might be leaning in a little closer, taking notes, you start to wonder what's next. Because if they are there, then everything from the rise and fall of empires to the way a single person treats a stranger could be part of what they're evaluating. And that means our lives, no matter how small they might seem in the vast scale of the universe, might be more visible and matter more than we have ever dared to realize.